Hello, and welcome to another fully live Q&A episode of Hacking with Friends. My name is Kody Kinzie. I am a security researcher at Varonis, and today I'm by myself again, running the stream unpredictably and a little bit late because LinkedIn wasn't cooperating, but I am here to take your hacker-related questions and also to do a little bit of a demonstration around infrared. So I'm pleased to see people in the chat already. I have been trying to run this at 1 p.m. most of the time, but sometimes have to fall back a little bit as we have guests and stuff. But yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I'm going to be doing the next stream from Los Angeles, actually. So we'll see how that one goes. So there are a number of different things I want to talk about this week, even before we get some questions. And one of them was getting quoted in The Verge, which is kind of cool. So earlier this week, I have like an alert set on my name. So if news comes out with my name in it, I actually find out about it. And it went off and I was like, oh God, what is this? Like, are people writing about me? But instead it was a comment that I had left on a article about smart home. So a reporter had reached out and asked about like, what are the risks of incorporating devices in a smart home? And one of them that I guess nobody else covered, and let me find my quote here. It's me. One of the things that I touched on that I guess other people did not touch on was the fact that you can make a good amount of money infecting people's devices, like routers and such, and then reselling the ability to traffic suspicious transactions or other things through that network. So being able to sell home networks as a VPN endpoint is something that not a lot of people consider. But when you have an IoT device that could be infected, it's a perfect portal into someone's home network and can sometimes be used to route all sorts of sketchy credit card transactions and attacks and other things that people would never normally want to do through a connection that could be traced back to them. So cyber criminals do use vulnerabilities in home networks, including vulnerable IoT devices, which often can expose like passwords and other things that are key to getting into the network. They will use those as a way to get in and then start trafficking all sorts of like sketchy transactions through that Wi-Fi network of just some random innocent person that installed a insecure IoT device. So pretty cool. I have been in The Verge twice this year, which is a new record for me. So really happy to see this. And reporters reach out fairly frequently, and I often like give little statements or like interviews, and it's not all the time that they get published. So it was just kind of cool to see that. And I was just glad that once the alert popped up, it wasn't something that was terrible. By the way, if you haven't set a Google search alert for your own name, you should probably do that because I don't like to be surprised. All right, so other stuff going on. Last week, I skipped out on the Friday stream. I'm sorry, everyone. However, if you were attending the HomCon, then you got to see my presentation there, where I talked a lot about microcontrollers. So I have been trying to do this thing where like I make a talk about microcontrollers and then update it with all the new ones that come out every year so I can keep it relevant and talk about some really cool evolving attacks. And this time was no exception. I got to update my talk. I got to include a lot of new microcontrollers, new projects. It was super, super fun. So I'm not sure if the recording of the talk is still up, but I'm going to be giving them my slides. Another thing is every year on these slides, I update like the cyber weapons to like, be AI generated. And last year they were all like lumpy and like it was like the Dolly mini version of it, which was like honestly like kind of abstractly better in some cases, because I found that like the new like Bing Dolly like really gets specific about the details. So you get this like giant honking cyber weapon or these like very specific microcontroller gun shaped looking things. But anyway, it's cool to update this every year and go through and talk about new microcontrollers, stuff they can do. And I even got to do a couple live demos, which I hate to do. Yeah, so once these go up, I highly recommend you check it out. I put a lot of energy into this presentation, and HomCon was super fun. So check out the IoT Hacking Village on Twitter. Yeah, I believe that they will be putting up a recording at some point pretty soon. So yes, super fun. And I will be doing this talk more often. I like to keep it fresh and, keep adding more and more stuff. I think my favorite one from this one was the Flipper Gore channel. If you guys haven't been over to the Flipper Zero Discord server and like seen like all the stuff that those awful people, innovators are doing with their flippers, it is frankly shocking to see, to see the kind of stuff they've attempted to do with their poor Flipper Zeros. So yeah, lots of cool stuff that I covered in this talk. I will definitely post it on my Twitter as soon as the recording comes out. But if you haven't seen the Flipper Gore channel, I have to say, it was probably my favorite part of the entire presentation. Okay, so some other stuff I wanted to talk about. We have a Discord community, and people in the Discord community are talking about some interesting stuff. So James Randolph posted about this fake Flipper Zero video in which a smart meter is smoked. And by that, it seems like, like you're basically resetting the smart meter or interfering with it so it can't do its job. Now, because this is looking as though it's making it super easy to commit utility theft, obviously, hackers were not thrilled about this, and they did not particularly like this. You can see that there's a Hackaday article, and they specifically say it's a bad look for hardware hackers. So yeah, this video is getting a lot of attention. And would this be possible? Like, just like right off the bat, like, is this something that like the Flipper could actually do and is probable? Well, I don't know the way these systems work, but based on the type of equipment that's on a Flipper, like radio frequency stuff and some other things that might interact with the smart meter, I wouldn't immediately rule this out as, being totally improbable. Like at least there's some stuff here that looks like it could be real. But diving into this, somebody went ahead and debunked it and was like kind of reverse engineering and trying to like figure out whether or not this was true. And it looks like, yeah, it was not true. The person that wanted to debunk this went ahead and like reverse engineered the address of where this was taken and saw that this is like a separate meter that's like not the one that's directly connected to the house. So it looks like something that was like staged in order to get attention. But the big conversation was like, okay, for people who are looking for an excuse to regulate this stuff or tell us that we shouldn't have access to hardware hacking tools, like an example of how to commit meter theft is like probably one of the worst looks you could have to make that tool look legitimate. And James is saying that it would be tough because smart meters hop frequencies. Yeah, I don't know a ton about how smart meters work, but I do know that, even if you did figure out how to do this, like posting it on social media for cloud is immediately going to get backlash from the hacker community and then also from regulatory bodies. So I can imagine that some people here are probably going to take this seriously and try to investigate and figure out what's going on. It seems like the hacker community has already kind of ruled this out as being a legitimate video. But, people were talking about it. So if you want to join our Discord community, by the way, where this conversation is happening, then you can go to nugget.lol, nugget.lol, and you can join our community and, post questions for this chat and lots more. So I'm just going to go ahead and check while I'm here and see if we have any new questions in the live Q&A. We talked about this one already. And we went over this one today. So I guess that's pretty much it. So if you guys have anything you want to talk about on the live stream, whether it's a question or whatever else, make sure to jump into our Discord server and post on our live Q&A, and I will make sure that that gets answered. So yeah, what else to go over today? All right, let's see. Aside from The Verge and HomCon. Oh, yeah. So I just wanted to shout out ChatGPT for making the news, imagining valid Windows keys. Well, it seems like these keys will get you most of the way through the registration. There are definitely some risks associated with it. But it is still funny that like ChatGPT understands what the idea of like a valid Windows key is and is able to generate ones that actually work for registration. So I just thought that that was incredibly funny. All right, so in the chat, yes, James, I really like the Flipper Gore channel. I think it's amazing that people are willing to destroy their very expensive Flipper in order to advance the science of Flipper. Let's see. All right. How do I study for a certification exam? Well, I don't have any certs. So I'm still trying to get Michael to come back on the stream, but he only wants to do it after work on his new job, which is at like 6 p.m. Mountain time. So I'm not totally sure if we're going to be able to make that happen anytime soon, but I do want to have him come back and answer these questions because I get a lot of questions about certs and frankly, I don't have any yet. So probably wouldn't be the best one to tell you about how to study for it, unfortunately. All right. Next up, we're going to go to the YouTube channel. So we have a bunch of different questions here, and one of them is about how to make a QR code stencil. So this episode was talking about how you can start messing with like QR code security or just QR codes in general by making stencils. And stencils are useful for if you wanted to like paint a QR code. And this is something I was really into for a while. Like, how small can you make a stencil? What are the best materials for it? And I started 3D printing QR code stencils in order to be able to like paint and leave a very rugged QR code that's able to be scanned even after a long time, or some damage from like paint dripping or other irregularities. So this was actually incredibly hard. I find that printing such a large, precise, and flat surface with a 3D printer takes hours. It is something that is difficult. And then as soon as you paint it, you can't really use any solvents in order to get the existing paint off of it. So they're difficult to clean. When you get them wet, they start to warp. And when they get warm, they also start to warp. So as a way of quickly like creating a QR code that you can like make a whole bunch of, 3D printing, I would give it a 6 or 7 out of 10, maybe a 7 out of 10 if you've got a good, reliable, and relatively fast 3D printer with decent materials. I highly recommend you print it in white. If you print it in black, it will get hot and it will curl up around the edges, and it will be very, very difficult to get a clean transfer. One thing that I've learned since this is that it's actually way cheaper and easier if you have a makerspace or a hackerspace near you to use their laser cutter to do this. Doing this in a subtractive way takes minutes, whereas doing this in an additive way takes hours. So just taking a piece of wood over to your local hackerspace, or like buying one of the ones they have available and helping them cut out a QR code stencil. There's actually tools that will automatically create a QR code that is laser cuttable from just like a little like PNG image. So it's all basically done. It's really, really cool. The thing that's annoying is then taking that and then converting it to be able to be 3D printed. So yeah, there's a lot of stages of processing here. How much money to make me a stencil? I'm looking to find some that can help me make one. Just go to your local hackerspace, your local makerspace. They'll charge you like $5 or $10 tops to cut out one from, you know, just thin plywood or something like that, that would make it possible for you to do a whole bunch of stencils. It's easier to clean. It's easier, you know, to do a lot of things with, and it probably won't curl up around the edges as fast as plastic will. So yes, this is my own product, and I still am recommending elsewhere. There is one exception though. I did note that if you have like a white and a black plastic and you can choose where the print stops and lets you switch the two, I had a really nasty jam because of doing this over and over that took me like weeks to fix. But I did learn that you can print a QR code that has like a black background, and then you swap out the filament and you make the top layer that has the data white. And those are actually super durable. You can make them really thin, like 2-3 layers, and you can stick them places, and they actually hold up for like a really long time. So through all of my QR code experimentation, I found that like the stencils I was making out of 3D printed plastic were like kind of awful to work with. The wooden ones were actually super fast. And then the dual layer, like color changing ones, were probably the most challenging and hands-on to do, but they were durable, they're easy to stick places, and they last like a really long time. So I kind of honestly recommend them. I think they're cool. Also, yes, a resin printer would be pretty fast. The concern, of course, would just be that like the chemicals that you're spraying on it are weird, right? Like if you're using like spray paint to do the stencil, then like you're spraying like weird non-polar solvents and stuff on this like resin and plastic. Is like, I don't really know what those chemicals do to each other. I know that on PLA Plus from eSun, it makes the plastic like quite brittle to have the like paint sprayed on it, because the solvent soaks the plastic and it starts like getting a little bit brittle as it works its way into the plastic. So lots of kind of trade-offs here. I found that it was really fun to kind of scale QR codes because humans are curious, you know, like often people will scan a QR code when they wouldn't read a sign because they want to know what the data is. It's not human readable and they're curious about it. So like, you know, creating QR codes in places that are unexpected are a great way to grab people's attention and get them to scan something. And if that something happens to go, I don't know, to like a canary token tracking link, then you would have a rough idea of how many people were going to that place. Not that I've ever done that. But yeah, so lots of cool things around QR codes. Great question. And if anybody has any more questions about 3D printing QR codes, making dual layer QR codes, making stencils, it's all stuff that I've been doing. And I think I've even found the smallest possible QR code I can make with 3D printing, which is about the size of a dime. Super fun to make. Oh yeah, another person saying that vinyl cutters can work for this too. Yes, I actually, our local hackerspace in Missoula, Montana has a vinyl cutter for making stickers and stuff, and I'm so jealous because I think that, yeah, you could actually make really sick QR codes from that relatively easily. I haven't done a lot of vinyl cutting myself, but I find that those machines pop up in lots of hackerspaces because they're tons of fun to use. So yes, I do think that you can also do vinyl QR codes if you have access to a hackerspace that has a vinyl cutter. Resin printer would be pretty fast, though, I have to say. All right, question. Do I have an Instagram or Twitter? Yes, my Twitter is literally my full name, Kody Kinzie. I also have an Instagram from when I was 19. But it is private and I don't post any hacking content on there. It's mostly just a way for me to compare myself to people I went to high school with. So you don't want to be part of that. So yeah, I don't really use Instagram for work, but I do use Twitter extensively. I am looking to start using Mastodon more just because I don't Twitter's crazy. I recently like turned off my ad blocker by accident and got to see what like normal Twitter looks like. It looks crazy. It looks absolutely crazy. There are so many untargeted junk ads. Like a lot of them seem like computer generated almost, where like they have like almost the same icon and like the same kind of nonsense sounding business name, and they're selling the same like drop ship like AliExpress like style products. And I don't know. I'm just so turned off by the way that Twitter looks right now. It's so gross. But I find that Instagram is like just as bad. So that's why I don't use Instagram, because I hate the ads. I have no way of blocking it, at least on my phone. And then on Twitter, at least I can block out all the ads. I realized today, you guys, that uBlock Origin completely blocks like promoted tweets on Twitter. It is amazing. The only reason I got to see the ugly side of Twitter is I accidentally opened a private window and like forgot that I was still in it. But yeah, it's really great to not see those ads, because otherwise it's quite annoying to use the service. But yeah, I just don't like Meta. I don't like Facebook, whatever they're calling themselves these days. Like I just don't like them. So I'm trying to avoid using their products for work, at least, and to give them any more money than I need to, or data. Ooh, lots of interaction. Okay, so here is a microcontroller related. Oh my God, it doesn't even fit on the screen. Hold on, let's see. I've been playing with the idea of using a soft AP on an ESP8266 D1 Mini rather than having people redirect with a QR code. Why not offer an open Wi-Fi point with your bio, resume, and appropriate links? That's crazy. Okay, so first I want to just clarify what we're talking about here. So if we wanted to communicate information to someone, we're doing it via either a QR code where you scan it and their data's there, or an access point where people are redirected via a QR code that then offers all the information. My question is like, well, okay, so there's a couple scenarios here, one of which makes sense and one of them doesn't. So one of the places that I do this sort of thing is there's a lot of street art in like the Los Angeles storm drain tunnels. And I wanted to make like a wiki about it and basically have information about all the different tunnels, like links to the city documents, and then like photos of some of the best art down there and information about the artists. So like for me, I wanted to be able to have people scan the QR code and be able to go to the wiki and like either add their own information or like learn about the area that they're in. I thought that would be cool. In that case, if I was somewhere like really deep in the tunnels and I had a little like battery powered microcontroller that like, I don't know, turns on every so often, and people scanned a QR code, then join this open access point, and then we're presented with like information, like that would be something that would make sense. Otherwise, I question why you would want someone to be standing within range of a microcontroller when you could just have that QR code redirect them to like any link on the internet. Just not trying to rain on your parade. I'm just saying, like, for the purpose of giving someone your information, it's easy. It seems easier to just put the information on GitHub and then have a QR code scanned directly to that, or something like that, or encode the data in the QR code, whatever. Now, if you're talking about like you want someone, so here's a different example, offline chat. I think this is so cool. So if you had somewhere that didn't have any cell phone service, had no infrastructure, but you had a little bit of power, maybe solar panels, something like that, you could have like a QR code and then an access point that's running, that's creating like a chat or like a form, basically, where people can connect on their phones and leave comments, maybe upload a photo, kind of like an offline forum or an offline chat room. So that would be cool, because you could have people in a physical space be like, what's this? Scan the QR code. It pops open like a little like website that has information for them, or like a way for them to communicate with other people, a guest book, something like that. That is all. So, or even like in like a disaster scenario, being able to post photos of like your lost dog or lost family member or something, when there's no infrastructure. That would be a way where people could take a phone, scan a QR code, get redirected to an offline service that's still, it's operating over Wi-Fi, but it's not connected to the internet. That stuff is all actually super fascinating and very possible. So for replacing your business card, if you want to have a little card that has a QR code on one side and then like a microcontroller on the other, and people have to turn it on, scan the QR code, and then go to the secret Wi-Fi network to get your information. I hope you're going to do a lot of stuff for them, because you're setting a pretty high bar for what they need to do, unless it's like a little CTF secret or something. Like, that sounds cool. But yeah, there's definitely scenarios where this would be super cool and useful. Like, again, like the wiki thing I mentioned, or like the offline chat or things like that. And then there's other scenarios where it might just be more simple to have them connect and then, go somewhere on the internet. Because most people, if they're scanning it with the phone and they have mobile data connection, it might be more convoluted to have them connecting to like a local area network, because the ESP8266 can't offer a real internet connection, and most mobile devices will reject it. They'll connect to it and be like, oh, this is a bad Wi-Fi network, and then they'll leave the network and connect to another one, or fall back on cellular data. So like that little captive portal like won't even pop up. It's a pain. Trust me, I've done it a lot. Oh, okay. So this is for a techie geocache project. So yeah, if that's what it's for, then absolutely. If you had people like geocaching to a specific area, and like the thing is so hidden that they're not even supposed to touch it, and they just scan the QR code and then they can get the next clue, you're absolutely correct that this project would be really good for that. Because you could have offline secret information, or you could even have them communicate with each other by like leaving a message and having another team like find it. Very cool. So yeah, that actually sounds awesome. Battery powered, this would probably last for like days, like provided you weren't broadcasting all the time, especially with like a little battery pack or something. I think that could be really fun. We were considering doing something like this for DEF CON, where people would have to find like hidden access points that are just like around, that have like pieces of information like that on it. So yeah, that is actually something that would be both fun and potentially really cool, especially if the area does not have like Wi-Fi service or something like that, or cellular service as well. Oh my gosh. One of these crazy body modders did that with the device in their leg. Okay. That seems like a lot. Wow. Another person's asking, no Mastodon. I am on Mastodon. I just find it to be kind of the Linux of social media, and Twitter did an excellent job of breaking the bridge between Mastodon and Twitter. So I used to be able to cross-post back and forth, and I would kind of use them both equally, but I find myself checking Mastodon less because I have to manually repost everything, and that is a pain. So if anybody knows of a good functioning Twitter cross-poster, please let me know. I would love to use Mastodon more. I really like the people on it. I just hate having to post everything that I do twice. Hey, what did I miss? Not that much. Like, we've been talking about the presentation I did last week. We've been talking about microcontrollers and how we can use them for things like geocaching and offline stuff, and also about QR codes and how we can make them in physical spaces, both by 3D printing and laser cutting and vinyl cutting. All of them very cool. What is the best definition for the Discord app? You mean like, how do you get there? Go to nugget.lol. Here you go. There you go, my friend. I have sent the link. All right, another question. This one about laptops. Hey, Kody, can you suggest a good laptop that will give me automatically from the start a good to boot, knowing me? Yeah, I swear by old ThinkPads. They're not all great, but there's a lot of people that are absolutely crazy about old ThinkPads. They like rank them for what they're good at, and like you can find these like fleet maintained former like business executive ThinkPads on eBay for very cheap. They run Linux, they run Windows, and you can find them for like a couple $100s sometimes. Like my last one I think was like $300 or $400, and it's like super nice. It has like a touch screen and like a fingerprint sensor and a bunch of other stuff like I didn't specifically even think I wanted, but it was available, so I grabbed it. And it's a pretty reliable computer. The only thing is like the mouse buttons, like the left and right click, don't work. So, and it turns out that replacing those is a pain. So I just use a mouse. But as a trade-off for like a $400 computer with a bunch of features that runs Windows, Linux, and everything else I needed to do for experiments, like if it were to get infected and get ransomware, I would just throw it in the trash and buy another one. So I really do recommend like retired ThinkPads, and there's lots of resources where people break down what the good models are depending on what you're looking for. I would just say maybe not the T90S. If you're getting the T90S, the keyboard is impossible to replace without taking out every single piece of the computer's guts. You literally have to disassemble absolutely everything just to replace that mouse that doesn't work. So that's my one gripe with that specific model. But if you're going to get just a T90 without the S, then they are great. A lot of people speaking up for Dell. I have to say, a couple years ago, I dressed up for Halloween as like a computer that was like infected by a hacker. So I was like in a hacker outfit inside of a giant refrigerator box that had the Dell logo spray painted on the side, and a bunch of crying drunk people came up to me and like gave me hugs and told me about their experience like with their first Dell computer. And it really seems like there's a lot more like brand affinity for Dell computers out there than I originally believed. So if you're looking for a costume that will make drunk people love you, a Dell computer actually seems to be a really popular choice. Okay. Do you have the slides available from my class? I will. I do actually have last year's presentation. That's already up and available. So if you wanted to check out basically the talk I did last time, but like with a couple of the newer microcontrollers missing, I will find it. And I will post the link. I did a similar talk at the Hope conference last year. And the slides are all like linked to that and available. So I'm still waiting on the IoT Hacking Village to put out the recording, and I'll pair the recording with my copy of the slides. But yes, I will get you that link. Do you have to log in to said website? Which website? Discord. I don't know. Here's a question. Is ngrok a service or product? I actually haven't used this in such a long time. I might have to rely on someone in the audience to answer this one. I believe that it was a product, but again, I have not used this in a really, really, really long time. So I could be very, very wrong about this. All right, back to the YouTube channel. We have thanks. Yeah, for sure. Oh, wait, for what? Oh, for Angelina's presentation. Yes, so Angelina should be on again next week. If you guys caught the last two Q&A streams, we had our guest Angelina on, and she was talking about a lot. She was talking about drone hacking. She was talking about aerospace hacking. She's going to be teaching a class in Southern California on satellite hacking. So if you're there, you should definitely check it out. It's on the Cyber Weapons Lab LA meetup page, and will be at Null Space Labs. So you're welcome on behalf of both me and Angelina. Great video, boys. I love you guys. You're awesome on Macs for the most part. I run Linux on Macs on my Dell. Callie runs great on both. Not hating on Windows, but Apple all the way. I find like the more hackers that I talk to, the more I find that I was literally like talking to a hacker yesterday about how like he doesn't really use Apple products except like, like a MacBook, like he's not into the ecosystem. Like he hasn't gone all in. It's just like these computers will run Linux and do Linuxy things, and they come with great support and they have good hardware. It's a lot of people end up kind of circling back to that. It's funny because the first experience I had with the hacker community was stepping up to work on the Nullbyte channel, and having the guy that used to work there, Occupy the Web, post on his Twitter that I didn't know anything about hacking because I was using a MacBook, and that they would let anyone on Nullbyte nowadays. I was just like, okay, so I'm getting like judged by my operating system. So that was there's a lot of heat by people who I think like maybe invest a little bit more than they should of their personality in whatever operating system they're running. I'm not talking to you Arch Linux people, but you just bring it up all the time. It's really just a matter of like, what are the best tools for the job you're trying to do? As a content creator and as someone who's making a lot of video production stuff, the Adobe Creative Suite doesn't run so good on Ubuntu. So I've really got to, be flexible with the operating systems I'm using and kind of be agnostic about it depending on like what my need is and what I'm trying to do. So yeah, I don't want to jump into the operating system wars. I just do want to note that a lot of hackers actually do use Macs because they like, if you've got the money or if your employer will pay for it, they do work really well. And there's a lot less frustration than, for example, my T90S that I got off eBay. Another Signal hater. I appreciate it. This is the dumbest move ever. Deleting SMS is way too much confusion by trying to use two messaging apps, RIP Signal. So I still use Signal for a lot of my business communication, but I have 5 or 6 people now who like will not use Signal. They are SMS only, and those people are now relegated to a second app that I forget to check for days or weeks at a time. And it's the same way going back to Signal. A lot of my friends who don't use Signal primarily will forget to check the Signal app for days or weeks because SMS is no longer supported. Now, Previously, if you had an Android phone, you could manage all of your communication through a single app, which is great. It would automatically downgrade to SMS, but remind you that the message was insecure if you were messaging someone who's outside of the Signal ecosystem. But you could still message any number you wanted to. Signal removed that, so now you cannot message anybody who is not on Signal. It's just another messenger at this point. After they dropped that support, I found that people who were kind of on the fence about using it fell off the wagon. And that was a large percentage of people who I interact with, but I'm trying to get them to be better with security. I'm trying to at least get them to, use Signal and not SMS. And that made it so much harder for me. So yeah, I'm currently still living the fallout of this change. People with iOS devices are unaffected because I guess like iMessage or something else causes this not to work. But yeah, Android users definitely took a little bit of an L here and now have to use two separate apps to manage their communication. One of them secure, one of them not. And then at that point, you might as well just have like, a, a whole like gallery of different like apps depending on like who you want to communicate with and how. I just don't like that. I find I forget to check them. So not a huge fan of this. Yeah, I know. Like I see that Occupy the Web is like is doing a lot more like video stuff. I've honestly never had a single conversation with a person. This is someone who like left Nullbyte on bad terms, like and took a lot of the community with him. Like I know that he had some like drama with like the site owners and like legitimately like I work with those people and like I get it. I understand. Like it sounded like kind of frustrating. But since then, like I just, but it sticks with you. For you only have one opportunity to make a first impression, and having someone like come for me who like didn't know me and was literally just ripping on me because of my operating system, I always thought that was super lame. So I mean, it's not like the worst thing. Like I think he provides some valuable content, but there's two different ways you can go about like presenting yourself as an instructor. And we have very polar opposite teaching styles. Me is like, I am who I am. Like I am a student as well. I'm learning this. I'm not like a deep dive expert on anything except a couple specific fields that I've really, really like gone deep on. But anything else, like I know enough about it to maybe teach a little bit. And I'm happy to like learn something and then turn around and teach other people. But I never pretend to be like a master or an expert. There's not a lot of like mystery behind my persona. Like I don't make any like grandiose claims. I don't hide my face. Like I don't like pretend that I'm like the ultimate hacking master, and I don't gatekeep. That's my biggest thing. Everybody should feel comfortable learning, and there's room for all sorts of different skills in the hacker community. I feel like a little bit his style is much more like I am the master, I am better than you, like you can aspire to be like me, but I decide whether or not you're good enough. I just don't, frankly, like I find that stuff so difficult to learn that like some of my worst teachers in community college were like that, and I found it to be like a kind of toxic personality trait. So I don't learn very well from people who assume like a cult of personality and then like teach down to me. I learn very well from people who treat me like a peer and share their passion with me, and that's the way that I teach as well. So in spite of having a kind of a negative experience when I first got started with like just getting torched by like the last guy that worked at Nullbyte, I appreciate that he's out there producing content, like making certs and whatnot. But yeah, it's good to see. So again, like I've never had a conversation with a person. Maybe I have. I have no idea what he looks like. So if maybe he did bump into me at some point at a hacker conference, I would have no idea, because we're just very different when it comes to teaching styles and the way that we approach beginners. I don't like challenge beginners by being like, all right, stupids, like, guess what? I'm going to give you a nugget of knowledge today. I'm going to be like, I just learned this too. Like, this is what I found and this is what made sense to me. So different teaching styles. I find that a lot of people like take the identity of being a hacker and it really comforts them. It's like something that makes them feel strong and like kind of like excuses being weird a little bit. And like, I get it, but like at a certain point it is a job, and making people feel comfortable and bringing people into it is really, in my opinion, the most important thing for anybody who's going to be upfront teaching. So like, I just don't, I just don't particularly, like identify with like teaching down to people when it comes to like skill level. I really feel like I'm either on the same skill level, maybe just a little bit more experienced, or just generally like a beginner that's trying to share what I know as I go through my own learning experience. So, I like your beginner friendly approach. Thank you. Yeah, I really think that like I have met so many people who are incredibly smart, competent people who are just in different careers or are just using different skills from me, who are like, wow, you're so smart. And I look at the stuff that they're doing and I'm like, I could never do that. Or maybe I could, but it would take me a really long time. And I recognize that there's all sorts of skills, some of which rather directly translate into cybersecurity once you learn some other basics. So the hardest part is just learning like the overall broad strokes, that you know generally what the space is like and you can make a decision about where you want to land. I think that that's the most important thing, and like trying to stress people out along the way is just like makes it harder. And it does appeal to a certain type of people, but like I find that those people don't speak to me. Like the people that I like are like punk hackers who are friendly and like look mean but act nice, you know? Like so they're people who like generally are you know, deep dive on one or two things and are willing to share their knowledge on that, but like don't gatekeep, you know? Like I find that if you use your knowledge to make other people feel bad about themselves, like you're not going to be a good teacher, at least not to me, maybe to some people. Let's see. Oh, we have, sorry, I kind of went off on that one, didn't I? How do you feel about, how do you feel about JITC Meet? Are you talking about Jitsi Meet? Is that what you're talking about? I did a whole conference using Jitsi Meet and it was chaotic, but I constantly force my like friends who like work at Google to use Jitsi Meet because it's open source. I've done all sorts of like stuff with it and it actually works great. So if you are in fact talking about Jitsi Meet instead of Jitic Meet, then I know what that is and I do like it. Yeah, that's it. Don't hate the hardware, hate the OS. Yes, 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 yes. All right, another question. Should we worry about the gamification of hacking, Ponagotchi, Wi-Fi hash monster, Flipper Zero, deauth watches, and their perception to the general public? Flipper brought a lot of shade. So, okay, that's a really interesting question. So as, I'm gonna turn this off while I answer. So as somebody who makes hacking hardware, like my primary focus is like, all right, we have this microcontroller, but it requires like command line experience and compilation, all this other stuff to understand how to use it to do a thing. That thing isn't hard. It's really getting it set up that's difficult. So a lot of these projects that are approaching, you know, taking, so let's take the deauth watch as an example. I actually, where's my nugget? So a lot of these products and my Wi-Fi nugget is actually based on some pretty common and easy to procure microcontrollers. My goal with this was actually looking at all the things I loved about the deauthor wristwatch and then deciding to make something that was better for a student or for somebody who wanted to learn. Because I kept meeting people in college who were wearing deauthor wristwatches. And like they're like, oh yeah, it's cool, it does this and that. And when I started learning more about the project, I realized that like these things can actually do a ton more than the wristwatch could ever do. But you know, like most people don't have access to the documentation or like it's not clear. So I really did a deep dive into everything these microcontrollers could do and then decided to break them out to make them as easy as possible for people to interact with. So a lot of these people, their core motivation is education. We want to take this thing that we know is great and make it simple and easy for beginners to feel confident learning with it for the first time. The consequence of that is these beginners want to show off. So like if you give people the tools, there's kind of two ways you can look at it. The deauthor has a mode where you can just straight up, you know, attack a wireless network, but you have to scan for it and select it and then deliberately like select the attack and run it in order for that to happen. It doesn't automatically run the attack. These things all require you to, you know, do manual actions using these tools to do something nefarious. They don't automatically execute. It's not just a button where you press it and it just attacks everything. So it really does matter like how much, like I think that these tools all have the question of like how much customization does the user have to do something really bad or illegal? Can they do it off the shelf and it's like one of the basic supported options? In that case, like that's really bad. Or is it something that they have to modify and tweak and the skill level is like relatively high in order to like make it so that this thing does something really bad? So that's kind of like the way that I measure these sorts of things. Like I take a look and I say, okay, is this for education? Yes. Okay. How easy is it to do like the worst thing that you would want to do this? Is it going to be so easy that like a middle schooler could grab one and like shut down their whole school for a day by like deauthing all these important things? Or is it going to be, they're going to have to watch a tutorial and go through to really do some damage? So that's kind of how I judge these things. I think, yes, the Flippers business model is to get people talking about it, is to have these videos get shared and to make it so that people are constantly seeing like edgy stuff happening. But really, like looking at the Flipper and looking at what people are using it for, it falls into just a handful of categories. Infrared, sub-gigahertz radio, and NFC. Like those are the three that I see people using all the time. Like those three things are 90% of what I see Flipper doing. So all these other like Flipper Gore channels where people are trying new stuff, like that's all highly experimental. The majority of users are using 3 features of the product. And most of those things are fairly benign. I would say that of all of them, like the sub-gigahertz radio is like by far the most chaotic. You can do like more disruptive things with the sub-gigahertz radio than anything else. And, you know, we have TV begons and infrared stuff that like the infrared part of it's not that sophisticated, but the NFC and then the sub-gigahertz radio, I would say the Flipper are the 2 most like edgy like parts of the product that are probably going to cause the most types of video. Like there was like videos of people changing the price on gas signs and stuff like that. It doesn't change it at the pump, but it does change it on the sign. And those sorts of things are going to draw some attention. So yeah, I think that the gamification of hacking is going to make it easier for beginners to grab one and know what to do. In fact, like, you know, my whole mission making the nuggets is to make it so that people who are picking this up can easily get started and know exactly what to do. Because, you know, when you grab one of these things and you don't know what to do, you know, if the only thing you've seen is an attack, then you're just going to try that attack, you know, like if there's a whole bunch of things you can learn, then maybe you're going to actually like sit down and learn how to use the thing. At least that's our hope. So, yeah, a lot of, a lot of kind of complicated thoughts there, but let me, while we have some questions, also do a little example. Oh my gosh, we have so many questions. Hold on, let me go through and make sure I don't miss any good ones. I've learned a lot with these projects. I have a Ponagachi and flashed Dioth V2 and V3 to D1 minis and have them used. Oh yeah, okay, cool. Yeah, so the D1 mini and the ESP8266 have so many cool projects associated with them. Like I really wanted to make it easy for people to learn about them. Actually, we've compiled them all on a website now. So if you go to nugget.dev, nugget.dev, which happens to be here, I just finished flashing a different nugget. You can actually connect your nugget and find out all the different projects that are available for it. So like if you have a D1 mini based nugget, this would have the Dauthor, the D1, sorry, the Dauthor V2, the Dauthor V3, and then I'm not even showing my screen, am I? Oops. There we go. The Dauthor V2, the Dauthor V3, and then MicroPython and the Dauth detector, I think are the ones that are supported now. So yeah, like there's lots of really cool projects that are supported on these microcontrollers, and some of them have a lot of cool things you can do with them, like the V3 Dauthor. Can I please start tweeting that I'm going live? Yes, although am I not anymore? There used to be an integration where it would tweet every time I go live, and I'm supposed to be live right now. So if I'm not, then thank you for letting me know, because something is broken. Let's see. It is Jitsi Meet. Okay, cool. So I wasn't talking about an unrelated service. I want to get into microcontrollers, but need beginner friendly. Okay, yeah, you should definitely watch my talk then. I'll try to pull it up. This was, let me turn this off for a second. I'll see if I can grab the link here for you. But yeah, the Hope Conference let me talk about a lot of bad things you can do. I think it was called $5 cyber weapons and how to use them. Let me see if I can pull it up. So if you're someone who wants to play with microcontrollers and you're confused, here it is. And you're confused about which one is the best to get started with, like, boy, do I have a long list for you. Here it is. I'm dropping it in the chat. There you go. So this is, and I can also turn on the screen share again. There we go. So $5 cyber weapons and how to use them. I go through the entire, look at how many chapters there are. I have to really give a shout out to the HopeCon people who made all these chapters. Path here, current project, attacks we'll cover today. Whew, there's a lot of them. So yeah, you can skip through it. You can see like all the different stuff that I cover. It even makes an auto playlist of all of it. Price ranges. I basically do a review of all the interesting attacks you can do with these microcontrollers. So for each microcontroller I mentioned, I go through and talk about all the different types of attacks you can do, including my very own ESP8266 beacon swarm. All right, here's a question. I have MicroPythons. Does that mean I can get started? Yes, there's a lot of different types of interpreted and compiled languages that work on these microcontrollers. In particular, MicroPython works on most all of them, but it has the least consistent documentation, and it is probably a little more difficult than CircuitPython. CircuitPython doesn't work on the ESP8266. It requires native USB to work, but there are plenty of microcontrollers on this list that do support CircuitPython. The one I use the most is the ESP32S2, which is the core of our USB nugget. So yeah, I would highly recommend that one, just because CircuitPython is a little bit easier. It loads over USB. You don't need to worry about like connecting over Wi-Fi. And then like the thing about MicroPython is like, oh, cool, I can connect to it over Wi-Fi and then like do all this programming. But then the second you use the Wi-Fi radio for anything, then like it's kind of out. And that's the whole thing about the ESP8266. It's cool that it has a Wi-Fi radio. So it kind of sucks to me that like one of the modes of programming it via CircuitPython is via its Wi-Fi radio, because you can't actually use that radio for programming anything. Let's see. Can you protect your network from deauthentication attacks? And how can you catch the attacker? That is a great question. So deauthentication attacks are easy to prevent. You can enable protected management frames, or you can upgrade to WPA3. Now, what I tend to find is that a lot of devices will also seamlessly shift between 5 gigahertz and 2.4 gigahertz. So if you have a device, like a microcontroller-based device like the ESP8266, and you want to, do some deauthentication, you cannot follow a device over to the 5 gigahertz channel, because the radio doesn't do that. So a lot of the time, like I've had some people in our Nugget chat being like, hey, I'm deauthenticating my device, but it's still connected to the network. And that's because their home router has a 5 gigahertz network and a 2.4 gigahertz network, and their device is just migrating over to the 5 gigahertz network as soon as it gets attacked. So my recommendation would be upgrade to WPA3, and then also enable protected management frames on WPA2, because frequently devices will downgrade. But if you want to have a relatively bulletproof network when it comes to deauthentication attacks, yeah, those two things, enabling protected management frames and upgrading to WPA3 will protect you. Those attacks will not work anymore. Pretty simple, actually. Not all routers support protected management frames, but WPA3 does work real good. So provided that your device doesn't get downgraded to WPA2, WPA3 will eliminate the threat of deauthentication attacks. It does open you up to other types of attacks, depending on the version of WPA3. So there are attacks against WPA3. Some of them involve just like consuming all the resources of the router by sending too many authentication requests. And because the new algorithm is kind of beefy for encryption on WPA3, that can actually make the router run out of resources and reboot and shut itself down, which is very funny. So there are deauthentication attacks against WPA3, but they're harder to execute. They depend on the version, and they're nowhere near as streamlined and simple as attacks against WPA2. Do you know that moment where you have to cover a part of a sticker you really like on your laptop with a new one, but you really don't want to? I usually, honestly, just either have to get my computer repaired and they just replace the shell, or get a new computer by that point. I've actually started doubling up on some projects that I'm no longer involved in, like putting new stickers over them. But yeah, I hate that feeling. I have enough stickers for 3 new laptops I've been holding on to, and I want to put them on my device so bad, but I hate this computer and it doesn't deserve those wonderful stickers. So yeah, that's why. Some more back and forth. What is this? That sounds like a fun project. Do you have a video for your home deauthor watch project or documentation? I feel like you're talking to someone else in the audience. But yes. What software do you use for note taking? How do you go about documenting things for yourself? I'm very much a beginner in cyber, so I'm curious what your take is on this. So I have previously had a number of different project management solutions. I'm currently trying to move over to Asana. I've used Twitter a lot, or not Twitter, sorry, Trello a lot for project management and making sure I'm keeping track of things. But fundamentally, it's really hard for me, honestly. I find myself taking notes sometimes in the note to self message on Signal. But yeah, I also use Google Docs a lot to just like jot down project specific notes and then link them together in a project management system. So that's usually how I do it. There's too many things I'm working on where it's just kind of spread all over the place. So a project management system keeps my notes all organized by project, and then I'll just have a bunch of Google Docs that are like tied to those projects when I need to take more extensive notes. Kind of a pain in the ass. So I'm not sure if I recommend it. An ESP8266 costs only €3. That is ultra cheap. Yes, you can find them for really cheap. The problem is when you get them for too cheap, sometimes the quality control isn't great, and it's a little confusing sometimes as to which version you want to get because there's lots of different breakout boards. Just generally avoid version 3 of both the Node MCU and the D1 Mini. They're not very good. But aside from that, yeah, you can find them for really cheap, and you can get started with a lot of different projects. Now, I would say you can't generally get everything out of these microcontrollers until you add some stuff like buttons, for example, a screen. Like, it really helps you like use the microcontroller for prototyping and stuff that you just wouldn't be able to do with the raw board. However, if you want to burn a bunch of boards and you don't care and you just want the cheapest possible thing to experiment with code, then yeah, there's lots and lots you can do with just an ESP8266. Getting them from China and then waiting for a couple months, like that is the downside of getting them at that cheap price. But I've been able to get them all the way down to $1.80, depending on how long I'm willing to wait for them to be delivered. All right, another question. Hey, Kody, if you aren't busy, well, that's a non-starter, but let's continue. If you aren't busy, want to help me get a Wi-Fi adapter working on my Pine Pro phone running Kali NetHunter Pro? Oh my God, no. I cannot describe how much I don't want to do that. I'm not so good at troubleshooting, and the last time I tried to set up Kali NetHunter, Zam sent me like a phone for it that supports Kali NetHunter, and I spent 3 days trying to get it installed, and I still didn't. So I think you're already ahead of me when it comes to Kali NetHunter. I wouldn't want to slow you down. Let's see. Oh my gosh, so many comments. All right. Flipper Zero is not available in your country. How hard is it to build one? Not a complete clone, of course, but maybe some functionalities on a Raspberry Pi. Can you recommend any sources for that? I haven't seen a Flopper Zero yet, like an open source or like copied version of the Flipper. There are products that do specific things that the Flipper does, like for like, RFID. There's like the Chameleon Mini, and there's some other stuff out there that do similar things. But I have not seen an open source Flipper Zero before. With a Raspberry Pi, you could do certain attacks like the NFC attacks, like cloning cards, that sort of thing. Like I think that with Kali Linux running on like a Raspberry Pi, you can do some of those attacks. It's just the sub gigahertz radio stuff that I don't really know how you would do. And obviously having an IR like thing, like that's not that difficult to do. In fact, I have been working on this. So over on my own Gore channel, which is Nugget Community Projects, I've been working on an infrared controlled Nugget. And what I want to do is to be able to receive and retransmit signals, kind of like a universal remote control. So this was the thing that I made. It's a little janky. It's fine. I'm using a perf board called an Electro Cookie off of Amazon to put this together. But basically, this is an infrared receiver, and this is an infrared transmitter. I need to have a little LED right here. But aside from that, this is a pretty straightforward circuit, and I actually have it with me right now. So if I wanted to replicate, just the IR functionality of the Flipper, then that actually might be possible with not that much hardware. So I'm gonna, let's see, go over here real quick. I'm going to plug this board in also the way that you see in the picture. And what this does is it gives me a Wi-Fi nugget that, a USB nugget that actually has the ability to do infrared receiving and transmitting. If I can plug this in. Okay, there it goes. All right, so I plugged it in. It should be on the correct path. I can now save this. So this is CircuitPython code. I should be able, I'm hoping. Of course. I'm going to make a new one then. All right, so this is very, very basic infrared code. I just realized this probably isn't going to work immediately because I need to add the infrared IR remote. And oh yeah, I also have to refresh this. That's why. But I can just plug in a nugget and basically have it with this little code be able to either send or receive infrared pulses with, like 22 lines of code. So one thing that I found interesting is there's actually an error, it seems like, in the way that CircuitPython does this. I was able to capture codes, but I wasn't able to repeat them. It was actually making an error on like the last code was coming out half of the value that it should be. And I found that this error was every time. So if I set up a relay where this would broadcast and then receive and then rebroadcast and then re-receive, it would go in a loop and start like decrementing the last number of the code by half each time I retransmitted it. So I think that there's something wrong with the way that CircuitPython is doing their infrared encoding, at least maybe with a specific chip. I'm not totally sure. It was very, very weird. So after playing with this for like a day or so, I went ahead and switched over to Arduino. Now, if you're just getting started with hardware, you might not know that Arduino IDE actually has a ton of different like libraries that have examples. So I just went ahead and installed a couple libraries that do infrared. Some of them are specifically for the ESP8266 or for Espressif chips. And I was able to just change over a couple pin definitions and get it working. So I'm going to do Command Shift M. And okay, so this is using a sketch called, oh, it's on my window. There we go. So this is using something called Smart IR Repeater, and it's waiting for input on a certain pin, which has the IR receiver on it, and it's going to retransmit it on pin number 3. So basically what this does is I've set like a 10-second delay here so that as soon as it receives an infrared code, it's going to hold on to it and send it back. Why did I do a 10-second delay? Well, because like I kept trying to turn on and off my TV, and if it sent the code too close to the legitimate signal, then I wouldn't be able to tell if it was actually working because the TV couldn't react that fast. So I'm going to take this, I think it's a Roku remote, and I'm going to hit the power button. I'm going to press it while facing towards the infrared receiver. And I wonder if it's going to work. I did not test this at all. Let me see my setup. Oh, so one very notable thing as well is that if you mess up the pinout on this, smoke will come out of the device. Wait, there's no batteries in this. Oh, wait, there are. Okay, never mind. It just felt very light. Let's see if this works. Anything? 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 No. Oh, okay. I'm gonna risk it all. See if I can grab one other remote and try it. The problem is this. Oh, this is a radio remote. There's no infrared at all. Okay. Well, I did my best. Let me try one more time. This actually might turn off my main light. Let's see. Yep, it sure did. And it's definitely a radio. Okay. So we have a non-working Roku remote is what I've learned from this so far. Let me try connecting this one more time and see what happens. This is why I hate doing live demos, because they never, ever work. Is this the right port? I'm not even sure. Let's try it. So, okay, obviously I am attempting to show off a victory here with the remote, but I'm pretty sure that if I have a dead Roku remote, I'm not going to see anything here. So I'll have to save this demo for next time, but I did try. What are you connected to? What serial port is this? Anyway, so that's the kind of work that I've been working on this week, is getting this infrared demo to work. As you can see, it is barely cooperating. I'm still determined to try to get it one more time. But yeah, I also definitely torched. I definitely torched not only a nugget, but a couple infrared receivers by plugging them in the wrong way. So yeah, if you're doing this, please pay very close attention to what port you are plugging them into, because you could very easily end up blowing up your device. All right, so I'm going to call it. I'm confident now that this is not working, but pretty simple when it does work. And I'm going to be putting together a circuit board that kind of like makes this easier to experiment with. So if you've got a nugget, or if you want to start getting started with infrared stuff, when the Roku remote's working anyway, it should be able to receive. All right, I think that we're not only out of time, but 3 minutes over. So I hope you enjoyed my presentation that didn't work. Oh, and I love that you use MicroPython, very inspiring. I'm using CircuitPython, but they're very, very similar. You know, like I think that most of the time CircuitPython has really great support, and the fact I can do all this infrared stuff in only 22 lines is great. I just wish that the library worked. And I find this, like, sometimes I'll just do something with CircuitPython and it just like straight up doesn't work. And you got to do a pull request, or like not a pull request. You got to like let them know that there's a problem, and they'll usually fix it. But yeah, I was a little frustrated that I wasn't able to just like copy and retransmit a code. It really didn't want to do it correctly. So I'll figure out what the issue is. But for now, Arduino IDE lets you flash over these sorts of things. It's just a lot more complicated to program. Okay. Oh yeah, you corrected yourself. It was CircuitPython. You got it. I think that we are pretty much done for the day. Sorry, I'm just reading the last of these comments. Can you recommend any IR receivers that have a very large bandwidth? I mean, these are just dumb receivers that I got off Amazon that work perfectly fine for this project. So I would say like these ones are fine. They're very cheap. Let's see. Oh, another question. Why does my website have many browser apps? I use uBlock Origin, and most of the website is blocked and very unusable. Well, I think that that's your problem right there. You're blocking aspects of the site. I don't know which website you mean, because I have hack.gay, which is just literally just a link tree. And then I have nugget.dev. If you're talking about that one, then it does need JavaScript and some other stuff in order to do web serial. So I don't think it has any other like any other stuff running than that, but do let me know. Obsidian is used for notes. Yeah, I would love to use a better note taker. I don't think that the note to self message on Signal is going to be sustainable forever. Okay, I think that that's going to be it. I know that there are still some questions out there. So if I didn't get a chance to answer your questions this week, please make sure to join our Discord server. You can go to nugget.lol, nugget.lol, and join. You can see more about the progress of my IR controlled nugget. I'm sure that it will be working by next time. I should have anticipated that the live demo wasn't going to work. You can also see the questions we're talking about. And if you have any questions that weren't answered, feel free to start a new post on the live Q&A, and we'll discuss it during the Q&A next week. So I'm going to be in Southern California this Friday. So I should be doing the live stream. It's going to be very loud. You will hear the sound of car alarms and clown horns and people shouting about selling fruit. So look forward to that, and I will see you all there. If you want to support the show, make sure you go to varonis.com/KODY. That's my name, Kody. And check out the most recent research that we have up. I believe this week we have, let's see, varonis.com/Kody is going to go to, is it still our Salesforce research? I hope so. Yeah, so I'm actually releasing a TikTok video about this research this week. So stay tuned to my, let's see, Hackbite TikTok, and then also my Twitter, where we're going to be breaking down this research in a short and fun TikTok video. So yeah, you can go to varonis.com/Kody to see the details of this research, but it is really cool and interesting to see how our researchers were managing to just change the host header of a request and getting access to tons of company Salesforce data. Super cool. And they do, of course, check to see how many people actually went to this link. So if you want the stream to keep going, just, go check it out. We appreciate it. All right, that is all the time we have for this week. Shout out to Varonis, who lets me do this every week, and also to all of you for bringing your best questions and conversation. I feel like we really covered a lot this week. I'll try to rejigger this demo and have it working for next week so I can show you guys a little bit about how infrared hacking works. And if I can get it working in Python, I'll try to have a little prototype people can play with as well. That's all the time we have, so we'll see you on Friday. Goodbye, everyone.